Hello, everybody. Here we go. This is a live broadcast by me. I'm Suzanne Collier. I'm the founder of bookcareers.com, and bookcareers.com is the independent careers service for the UK book publishing industry. I say UK because we work globally. I have clients all around the world across every continent. Tonight, I want to have a chat with you, give you a little introduction to book publishing careers. And I'm going to talk for about 10, maybe 15 minutes. If you've got any comments, chat, put it in the chat, feedback. I will then go to questions, and I hope you've got loads of questions for me. You know how much I love answering questions. Just a few things. Book Careers, we have a weekly careers podcast. We have a careers clinic, which is free for those who are in the UK. You get a quick 15-minute one-to-one chat with me. We don't do CV reviews in that chat because I can't just do a quick review of somebody's CV. I need to know a lot about you and a lot about the job you're looking for to help you tailor your CV. That's why we charge a fee. It is £99, and there's an online booking system. There's no appointments next week. There should be appointments weeks after. There's appointments 5 weeks out to 6, and we can help you prepare a job application for like a real live job. We won't write it word for word, but we will help you tailor it and guide you so you don't just learn in the call how to improve that application, but all subsequent applications too. Out of the feedback we get on those employability consultations, 100% of people who've taken one and paid for one of those consultations would recommend it to a friend, and we have got some really high scores. I think everybody's extremely satisfied on the service we provide. Right, enough about that. Today I want to talk to you through some of the basics of working in book publishing, which might help enable you to decide whether book publishing is a career for you and what area of book publishing you might look towards and what sort of jobs might be best for someone like you. Tonight's broadcast contains copyright material which is extracted from How to Job Search in Book Publishing, which will be published next year in 2024. I'm still writing the book, so you won't find it online available for pre-order just yet. I am still writing. See all those post-it notes? When those post-it notes start disappearing, then you know I'm making progress. At the moment, they've been quite static for a number of weeks. Now, if we haven't met before, as I said, I'm Suzanne Collier. I'm a fully qualified careers advisor who specialises in book publishing. I've been working in the industry for 40 years and have worked in both trade and academic publishing and in every department. And I've been shortlisted for many, many awards. Most recently, I've been shortlisted for Career Coach of the Year twice and 4 times by the Independent Publishers Guild for services to publishing. And I've won other awards too. The advice I give is always impartial and not loaded. If someone has paid me to tell you something, I will declare that I have been paid to tell you that information. Now, I'm doing these broadcasts as part of a commitment for inclusivity and diversity within the industry. I think that knowledge is power, and the more knowledge I share with you, the more empowered you will feel to progress with a career within the industry. Before you start job hunting in book publishing, it's really important to know a little bit about the industry, as it will impact the jobs you go for and the kind of books or journals you could be working on. Within book publishing, there are different sectors, and each sector has its own specialisation. To someone on the outside, each sector probably looks the same in that they're all publishers and all sell worldwide. However, as you look inside each sector, there are a lot of commonalities, but every sector has something unique that makes it different. And it could be the way that they acquire titles, the formats they publish in, the time of year they publish, who their customers are, and how they market or sell to those customers. The main sectors are adult trade. And now this is probably the kind of books you are most familiar with. It could be called consumer publishing or commercial publishing, and the publishers publish books for the everyday general popular market, create new markets, genres and fields of interest. And these are predominantly the books you'll see in bookshops, featured in newspapers and on mainstream media. And very much trade publishing is the technical term. So if somebody's talking about consumer or commercial, they mean trade. It responds very much to world trends and events. So right now, if you go into bookshop, you'll see loads of titles geared to Christmas, gifting, humour titles, stocking fillers, some lovely celebrity cookbooks or celebrity memoir. And it's very much geared to that commercial market, that's trade publishing. Then you have children's trade, which are predominantly trade publishing. So although they publish age-appropriate titles for children, sometimes with an educational slant, and one of their niches is that they'll publish for particular age groups. And there'll be terms such as YA being young adult, middle grade, which I think is about 6 to 8 year olds, picture flaps, which are picture books, which usually are 32 pages long and full of colour illustrations. And they're very much like adult trade publishers, except they're selling to children's books. Children's customers. Then we have educational publishers and ELT, English language teaching publishers. As the name implies, educational publishers are publishing textbooks and educational material for the schools and college markets. You might occasionally see educational books in bookshops, but that's not their main customer. Main customers are through schools, colleges, and educational establishments. Now, I can see we've got some people out there. If you want to say hello in the chat, I'd appreciate it. Let me know that you are there. Let me know if you've got any questions about what I'm saying, if I'm moving too fast, if I'm going too slow, if what I'm talking about is of interest and helpful, or even if you just want to say hi, please do. So as with educational publishers, as technology has moved on, most of the books are often in online platforms, and the educational publishers move all their content into like a custom-based app. If you've recently been in education, you know what I'm talking about. And if you're somebody like my age or somewhere in between, then you might be a little bit confused. But I know it's my job to know these things, and I've seen some of these things in action. And it's the educational publisher's aim to sell their platform, if they've got a platform with all their content on, that it's their aim to sell it in its entirety to a school where the teachers can use the platform to set homework, and the pupils can use the platform to complete the homework, as well as have other learning resources. And where the educational publishers cross over with the children's publishers is that sometimes the publisher will put all their children's books on these platforms too. Hello, those to the people who are saying hello. Really good that you could join us. Now, academic publishers publish for the academic market, as probably realise, and may cover both books and journals. Now, a journal is basically a subscription publication. Some might call it, it's like a magazine format, but it's not a magazine. It's professionally bound book, but it's called with a soft cover, and it's called a journal. And now, while most journals and books may fluctuate in popularity from time to time, the subjects and texts remain almost static in nature. For example, there might be a cultural history journal and there might be a new text or finding on the cultural history that relates to that journal. And the research could be groundbreaking, so the journal maintains its integrity. Then we have science, technical, medical publishing, STM publishing, and you have legal, professional, and society publishers. And as the name suggests, these publishers publish in some very specific fields and usually publish more journals and books. Their publishing model is very similar to academic publishing. And I just want to mention, if you're listening to the broadcast today on the 16th of November, this afternoon I saw Inspired Selection, which is one of the main recruitment consultants for the book publishing industry in the UK. They were looking for an editorial assistant who has a science degree to go and work for an academic publisher. So I think the website is inspiredselection.com. Highly recommend that you register with them. I haven't been paid to tell you that. I just have an excellent relationship with all the recruitment consultants, and in particular Inspired Selection. I work very closely with all the recruitment consultants, but I saw that job advertised. If you're listening to this at a later date, job's probably long gone, but do check out Inspired Selection anyway. Now, as well as book publishers, within the book publishing industry, there are lots and lots of book-related jobs. And they might be with literary agents who represent the authors, or publishing service companies who sell their services to book publishers. And the skills required for working for a literary agent or a publishing service company are very similar. In fact, they're the same sort of skills that one would use working for a book publisher. So don't think, oh, I must go and work for a literary agency, or I must go and work for a book publisher, but have a whole look at all the amount of different opportunities and career paths that are available. Because really, within book publishing, there are jobs for absolutely everybody, no matter what your skills. So literary agents, they act for the authors. They sign contracts with the authors and then aim to license the author's work to publishers worldwide. The difference between how a literary agent sells and how a publisher may sell is a publisher is very much concerned with forthcoming books, what is new, what is their next lot, what's coming in their next season, whereas a literary agent will be looking at an author's whole body of work and for the lifetime of the author's writing. Now, publishing service companies cover skills that perhaps supplement what a publisher might have a shortage of, or that a smaller publisher might buy in services from a publishing service company. And there are loads of publishing service companies currently within the UK, and they cover skills such as editorial, design, sales, marketing, publicity, and they aim to fill the gaps in the book publisher's company depending on the requirement and needs. The benefit to the publisher is that this is an extension of employing freelance staff. So publishers from time to time may employ a number of freelance staff so that they won't offer permanent jobs or they won't offer contracts, but what they'll say is, right, this is a project. We'd like you as a freelancer, an independent person, to work on this project for us. But when a publisher has an overall shortage, they might go to a publishing service company and say, we'd like to give you the contract to manage all our editorial processes, for example, or all our production processes, or all our design, or they might outsource all their sales to a publishing service company, which is probably one of the most popular service companies within the industry. I hope I'm not confusing you. And what it means is that publishers can buy in the services as and when they need them to support busy times without having the overheads of employing full-time staff who might not be busy all the time. So that's sort of a rundown, a complete overview of sort of the kind of sectors within publishing. And it's not comprehensive. And I do have a phrase about not using everything I say as a universal truth. I'm trying to be very, very general, and I'm trying to give you some snippets of information which may help you in your job search or future job search, or at least understanding some of the basics about how the book publishing industry is structured. So let's move on to how some of the different departments are structured, or how the companies themselves are structured. Now, when it comes to jobs, it's very much a pyramid, is that you've got the people at the top, people at the bottom, and the jobs in between. So entry level, you will come in at the bottom and work your way up to, yes, there are fewer jobs at the top than there are at the bottom. And I know at times, and particularly at this time of year, there don't seem to be many publishing jobs around. And I discussed this in our podcast of 2 weeks ago. If you want to find all the back episodes of the Book Careers podcast, well, first of all, we're on iTunes, Spotify, and most, if not all, podcast platforms. But you can find all the back episodes by going to the bookcareers.com website, clicking the top button that says podcasts, and using the search box on that page. Now, I do admit, I'm the first to admit, our website is such a mess, and I should be working on it now, but actually I prefer to talk to you than to work and update the website. That's very naughty of me, but I love talking to you all. And I love sharing so much information with you. So just out of interest, do those of you out there listening, have you set your mind on a particular publishing department just before I start running through them? Has anybody set their mind on, say, editorial or production or design, or haven't got a clue where they'd like to be? Please share with that in the chat. Now, the most common department, and these are the departments that are common whether you're in trade, academic, or in whatever kind of publisher you're in. These are the department names that turn up time and time again. That's very interesting. Liv says she's more interested in production or sales, And someone says, think I'd like to go with editorial, but I'm open to exploring other departments too. And someone else, Lydia, is interested in marketing and editorial. That's interesting, because marketing and editorial, whilst they have lots of commonalities, actually some very different skills in place, and we'll move on to those. But let's do a quick rundown of these different publishing departments. Now, editorial is probably the department everybody knows, and you think that you might sit there and read books all day and get paid for reading books. Oh, if only it was that simple. Now, editorial mainly commissions and compiles the content, the books, journals, and prepares it for publication. The editorial department will source the authors, find the books to publish either from a literary agent or through the unsolicited submissions a publisher receives. And there's a technical term for the unsolicited submissions a publisher receives, and that's called the slush pile. So if you see in a job advertisement, it says that they want you to look through the slush pile, that's what it means, that you're going through all the unsolicited manuscripts that have arrived within the editorial department. Or you might be within editorial researching potential authors and approaching them directly. Now, editorial jobs, to actually commission and to work on the author's books, it's almost like at the entry level, you'll just be supporting the people who are commissioning and bringing in the titles or actually doing the editing. And as you get promoted, that's where you might be doing some of the editorial work on the books, and then you might be commissioning and building a list of books that are going to be published in the future. And then we move on to production, and as you might expect, production takes care of the whole process in producing a book or journal. When it doesn't matter whether it's print, digital, or audio, production will be somewhere in that process. And the production process usually involves deciding on the specifications for the book, the typography, the size, the style, and binding. And they'll purchase the print or digital services, and they'll check that the print quality is maintained and the image quality is maintained, and they're probably buying and managing paper stocks too, particularly in some of the small to medium-sized publishers. So in some of the big publishers, you might find that they have one person doing all the buying and negotiating on behalf of production, and if you're a production controller or part of managing the production process, you're just really told which suppliers to use. The prices have already been agreed, or agreed with perhaps a little bit of negotiation. Then we go on to design. Now, the amount of in-house design skills a publisher might employ will vary depending according to the type of books the publisher publishes and the number of books they're publishing. For example, a publisher of highly illustrated books is likely to have quite a substantial design team. I say substantial, but that could just be still be 2 or 3 people. They might have an art manager or director who is directing and managing that team of designers, and they're working on the interiors of the books, the layouts, the photographs, the quality of the resolution of the images as well, cover design and the layout. For a publisher with a few illustrated titles, or maybe just doing black and white text, there might only be one designer employed, and they will hire freelance designers as and when they need them. And usually the freelance designers are mostly employed to illustrate the cover of a book. Okay, questions. Thank you, Sarah. I'm not sure if it's Sarah or Sarah. I will come to that question. It's one I get asked a lot. We'll come to that question in a few minutes. Now, we move on to rights, and this is the department. Rights is really short for copyright, and it's the department that's responsible for the exploitation of the publisher's copyright and content in whatever formats are available, or formats that might become available in the future. I mean, if you think about it, contracts when I started in publishing probably just covered print and audio, film and TV. And now, if you think about what a contract might contain, it will be print, audio, film, TV, will cover AI, whether any part of the book is used in AI. It will cover digital, it will cover online, and I'm sure I've missed loads and loads of different formats. So they could be selling all different kind of formats, and that is it. Rights is basically a selling job, and rights they might be selling in paperback or audio licensing to other publishers, or selling the copyright to publish an author's book to an overseas publisher, so that that book is published in a different language specifically for that marketplace. If you follow a lot of authors on social media, or if you pick up a best-selling book, it might say translated into over 100 languages. Well, it has been the rights department primarily, or if the literary agent kept the translation rights, that actually negotiated those deals. So that's what rights do. And mostly it is international foreign rights and TV, film and paperback rights, but they also grant permissions to other publishers to quote small extracts or use illustrations from a book in another publication. And they will grant more complex rights such as film and TV rights and other licenses. Now, I mentioned in their contracts, and whatever size of publisher you work for, someone will have to draw up an author or publisher contract, either to contract with the author to publish the book, or license another publisher or organization to publish a version of the author's books. And contracts usually is a department where someone who maybe have a legal background will thrive in, because it's contracts, they're used to contracts, but not exclusively where somebody with a law degree might go, or with a legal background might go, but it's always a very good place to start. Now, sales is one of the main departments who bring in income for the publisher. And whilst the department is called sales, and yes, the majority of the time you are selling, the majority of sales roles are account management and customer services. People sometimes have a very negative view of salespeople. They think of hard sell, they think of telephone people phoning up and selling double glazing. I had to sell double glazing once. It helped me pay for my driving test. So I know these sorts of things, that you're phoning up, when we used to have phone directories, going through the phone directory and ringing up everybody and trying to. Selling books is not like that at all. In fact, I've spent quite a lot of my career in publishing sales, and it's all repeat customers. So the customers I was selling to in my first selling job, I was still calling on those accounts and selling to those customers, in some places still seeing the same buyers as I saw in my first job. And that is key. It's account management, and you're working with the same customers over and over again. And it's very much about building a customer base and generating repeat business, as you might be selling to the same customer for the whole of your career, regardless of which publisher you work for. So you change jobs and you're selling to the same customers, and they'll become like old friends, which is lovely. But international sales, it covers the selling of the publisher's own editions to export customers throughout the world, or the area that the publisher has the license to sell a particular book. International sales often work with an international sales force, which might be a mix of representatives and freelance agents, to maximize every opportunity. And the work is likely to be divided by continent and country, so that each sales team becomes an expert in its designated marketplace. Now, you might have picked up that there's quite a lot of potential overlap between international sales and rights. So international sales are selling the publisher's own edition within a market, and rights are trying to license an edition to a foreign publisher to publish their own edition within the market. So sometimes international sales have to liaise very closely with rights before they actually sell certain titles in certain marketplaces, and vice versa. Now, this brings us on to marketing. Now, you probably receive loads of publishers' marketing every day, perhaps without even realizing it, because you're on every social media platform, and every day publishers are marketing their books. Marketing within publishing has two strands to it: the marketing of books and journals to businesses who might be bookshops, wholesalers, libraries, and academia. That's called business to business, or B2B. So if you see a job advert with the phrase B2B, that's what it means. And the marketing of books to the consumer, which will be B2C, or D2C, direct to the consumer. But the overall aim of marketing is to raise awareness of the book to people who can, and hopefully will, buy the books. And I mentioned social media, and it's so much more than just a few posts here and there and the occasional Facebook post or TikTok. It's a whole planned campaign that comes from the marketing team and the marketing strategy for the publisher. Having a successful social media campaign it can make and break a book, and it can turn poor sales of a book into a potential bestseller. Now, social media within book publishing is a very consuming part of any job. So where it actually falls within the publishing house you work for depends on the publisher you work for, really, because it's so time consuming and it's got such a time heavy resource. Every publisher seems to treat social media differently. So sometimes I see it within marketing, sometimes I see it with publicity and PR, which is where I'm about to move on to. Sometimes I see it within sales. Sometimes I can see it alternate between different teams over a 1 month, 2 month, or 3 month process, or 2 or 3 people within the company might share responsibilities on it to try and lessen that time resource. And that brings us on to publicity and PR, which most people think is glamorous side of publishing. Publicity is responsible for all the media coverage the publisher gets. They could be writing press releases, sending out review copies, organising author interviews online or in TV, radio, or the national press, or organising an author tour or a blog tour. or an in-person tour. And publicity is nearly always business to business. The publicists are talking to other businesses to get as much media coverage as possible so that the resulting publicity, which one would hope is positive, encourages members of the public to buy the author's books. Then we come on to some other departments, which, whilst they might look small, actually probably employ more people than the rest of the company. So you have finance, IT, resources, human resources. These are the departments which actually hold the company together, whether you realize it or not. And sometimes people think, oh, I don't want to look over here. I don't want to go and work. I want to work on the books. But actually, you might have a very different but interesting career in one of these administrative or operations type departments. And you'll still be very much involved in the publishing and very much involved in being able to say, yes, I work for a book publisher. So don't rule these out, because there are so many jobs that I see all the time advertised within these departments. And it's like every company that they have similar finance, they have similar IT and resources departments. And it is likely to feel different, is that you're working for a book publisher and these are critical functions, and you will be very much involved in the future strategy of the publishing company you are working for, and very often you will be involved in publishing related activities. So something to bear in mind. And I mentioned the word operations, and this brings us on to distribution and operations. In publishing, operations is very often another word for book distribution. And even with books that are only published online in ebook formats or whatever, or audio and digital publications, books and journals have to be distributed somehow. And for publishers who are producing print publications, their books will be distributed from a warehouse. Now, very few publishers own their own warehouse facilities, but will often share and use warehouse facilities with other publishers or specialist book distribution services. And this is something else. I mean, I worked for a publisher that outsourced their distributor like every other publisher I seem to have worked for. And I'd go to one publisher and we're with one distributor. I'd go to another publisher with that distributor. Then I'd go back to a different publisher and we'll be back with the same distribution company. So the same small number of distribution companies are involved in distributing books. Now, I'm going to go to some questions. I've spoken for an awful lot. I'm going to go for questions, but what I hope you realise is that within book publishing, there are jobs for absolutely everybody. And I know I'll talk another day a bit more about how to get in, and something to look out for next week. Next week is Work in Publishing Week. You need to make sure you're following the hashtag Work in Publishing across all social media next week. I always say with Work in Publishing Week that for 51 weeks of the year, Book Careers is Work in Publishing Week. And then during actual Work in Publishing Week, we tend to take a back seat and let everybody else produce all the content. But I do plan to release a YouTube video every day for 5 days next week. That's going to be quite interesting because I haven't recorded them yet. I haven't planned them out. If you've got something you want me to cover, then please put it in the chat, or you can email me, Suzanne@bookcareers.com, and I'll see what I can do. I think it's very interesting because I have a packed day of clients tomorrow. I even have seeing a client on Saturday morning. I have to record this week's podcast. I haven't got a clue what Monday's podcast is going to be. I know I sound quite haphazard, but as I said, I enjoy talking to you and don't spend enough time doing some of my admin. So let's go to questions now. Would you recommend getting a master's in publishing, or is this not necessary? Now, masters in publishing are absolutely brilliant qualifications to have. You will learn so much on a master's in publishing. You will get to learn in detail all the departments, but you will also get to work on projects. You'll be able to choose modules. You might decide to do a dissertation, and some of the publishing dissertations I've seen from master's students, absolutely fascinating. You might decide to do a major project. You get involved in group work. Part of that group work might be actually working on a book. They're absolutely brilliant. They have lots of guest speakers, so you get to know some of the names within the industry and network and make contacts. But they are very expensive. They're not cheap. And it is a personal choice whether you do a master's in publishing or not. It is up to you. Whether you've got a master's in publishing or not is not necessarily at this current moment in time going to make it will help your employability for sure. But then we have to look at how many people are doing masters in publishing courses compared to how many entry-level jobs there are. And we also have to look at some of the entry-level schemes for people coming into the industry, where they're looking from people from diverse backgrounds or lower social economic families, or people who've never been to university, or the first person in their family to go to university. So this is why I maintain it's a personal choice. There's no doubt they're brilliant, but it's a personal choice whether you decide to do one. What I would say is, in our salary survey, I produce salary data, is that when I analyse the career paths and the salaries of people doing masters versus non-masters, there isn't much difference at all. In fact, I'd say they're equal salaries, equal career paths, and that's why I maintain it's a personal choice. If you want to have a chat with me about one-to-one about whether doing a master's is right for you and you're in the UK, please book into the Careers Clinic and we can talk specifically about your own personal circumstances. I could also advise about which university you might be considering doing your master's at, to see what one might fit best for you compared to your career ambitions, because each of them have different modules. I mean, all of them. I mean, I can't fault the universities that do masters. I can't fault the universities that do publishing degrees. They're all absolutely excellent. They're all up to date in their teaching. You will have a fantastic experience, but you have to weigh that up about the cost and where you want to go and what your employability is like before you look to do a master's or not. Okay, but I highly recommend doing a master's, but you don't need one to get a publishing job. Cannot emphasize that enough. Lovely. Let's see some other question. How do you find these roles? I hardly see human resources roles, etc., in publishing companies on LinkedIn. That's funny because I sometimes see them. So what I would say is, if you're looking for a human resources role within a specific publisher, is to follow the human resources people from that publisher on LinkedIn. And it's simple as that. I mean, I see Penguin, I often use Penguin as an example. There are other publishers available, but Penguin Random House, they have a careers page. Most publishers now have a careers page, and you will find their HR jobs advertised on there along with all their publishing jobs. And I'd say I see Penguin recruit for the HR department about 2 or 3 times a year. So, because it's quite a big team. And I've seen Hachette look for somebody for HR within the last year. Quite a big team again. So I would make sure you're following the HR people from the publishers you want to work for on LinkedIn, and then you might find and see the opportunities that they're advertising. Now, I'm currently studying publishing at undergrad, and I'm struggling to find placement work experience opportunities. Do you have any advice or recommendation? Now, if you're currently studying publishing and you're struggling to find placements, one of the things I would do is I would refer you back to your lecturer on your university, because they will know where previous undergrad publishing students have been placed and what opportunities might be available for them. One of the things is and I mean, I'm not going to say I'm sure they've got a list, but usually, and the universities that I've worked with have had very strong connections with the publishers that are local to them, or know which publishers will have either remote internships or remote opportunities specifically for their students. So in the first instance, I would refer you back to your lecturer to tell them of some of the difficulties you're having. I mean, this is one of the things why you pay your university's fees, is to get the support like this. And one of the other things that comes into your university fees, I tell loads of people this, and they, oh yeah, I've heard of this, but I don't do this, is that each of your universities has a careers department. And I probably have the same qualification as the people that the careers officers in your university, and your careers officers within your university can get your CVs up to speed. They can help you with covering letters, can coach you for interviews. Just, wouldn't say in the same way that I would do, but in a very, very similar way. My first port of call would always be to talk to your careers officers at university, because that's part of your university fees. And whilst you're paying your university fees, it's free. And also there is a career guidance guarantee. If you're postgrad, or if it's sometime since you left university, there is something called the career guidance guarantee. And that is that your university careers department has to support you for a minimum of 3 years after you've graduated for free. Now, I say a minimum because when I mentioned this to some of my careers advisors chums, they said, oh, our university gives lifelong career support, but they weren't necessarily in publishing. But also too, those careers departments where there are publishing qualifications, they could possibly put you in touch with alumni, people who are working in publishing, and make some connections that way. I don't know how it works too much with GDPR, but it's always best to go and make friends in your university careers department. You will thank me for it, believe me. Okay, so that's what I would do, is I'd talk to your lecturer, talk to your careers department, particularly if you're doing publishing. Right, any other questions that you want me to answer? What I'd like to know from you, actually, okay, any advice for starting out in publishing later in life, later 30s, early 40s? I would say it might take you a bit longer, but that's not because publishing is ageist. Now, publishing is anything but ageist, but it's because if you can cope with the pay differential, and you're looking at an entry level salary that might be around 24 to 27,500, depending on which publisher and the location. If you It's about really selling your experience and your transferable skills. It really is about coming across about your selling your transferable skills. And if you've been doing a career elsewhere, are you at a kind of level where you could go in above entry level? And now this is one of the nuances about publishing, is that in most industries, and I've talked to lots of people that don't work in publishing and they tell me this, in most industries, when they say executive, that usually means director level. In publishing, executive usually means between assistant and manager level. So if you look for some of the executive level, like junior jobs, you may be able to match your transferable skills to one of those roles, and that could be your way of coming in to publishing. Do you recommend any publishing courses on websites that are not too expensive but can help me stand out on my CV with no specific publishing experience? Okay, let's bust the myth here. You do not need publishing experience to get a publishing job. You do not need to pay for training to get a publishing job. That is a huge myth, and I really want to dispel that myth as much as possible. The way you make your application stand out is by reading and understanding the job advertisement and tailoring your CV and covering letter accordingly. You research the publisher, you take time to tailor your CV and covering letter to the role. Now, 80% of people who apply for publishing jobs do not spend time on their CV, covering letter, or tailoring their application. So that means that in theory, if you tailor your application to the publisher, you will instantly stand out because you'll instantly be in the top 20% of applicants of every single job you apply for. Okay, but do I recommend publishing courses? Now, I recommend, if you want to do publishing courses, that yes, they cost money. But the reason why they cost money is, first of all, it's the best training, and secondly, it's recognised by publishers. But please do not think that by putting these names on your CV, you're instantly going to become more employable. You're not, because publishers and overall at entry level are looking for office skills and for somebody who's interested in working for them, and that is by tailoring your CV, covering letter. Now, I think it's episode 231 of the Book Careers podcast. It's the October publishing job seekers Q&A, where I spend a lot of time about making your application stand out. Some of it might sound like a replica of what I've just said, but there's more detail there. So I do suggest you go and hunt that out. As I said, go to the Book Careers website, click the top link that says podcast, and you'll find all the past episodes of the podcast. And if you wanted to know where I recommend you get training from, if it's editorial training, I would look at the Publishing Training Centre. They also do a distance learning editorial course, I believe. And I would look at the CIEP, the Chartered Institute of Editors and Proofreaders. And if you want to be a freelancer from absolutely nowhere, no experience within book publishing, I would go through their accreditation and their training, because there's a reason why they're a chartered institute. There's a reason why publishers usually look for freelancers that have CIEP accreditation. Now, is there an issue of applying too many times to one company in a year? On Penguin, any previous roles I've applied for show up and I feel like I'm applying too much. So they will not consider me. Now, what I would say is that there's a thing where you might look at where you are, what jobs you're applying for. Are you applying like for every job, entry level job, because you're doing a scattergun approach, or are you applying for every editorial job because that's what you want to do, or every marketing job because that's what you're doing? But if you're going for every single entry level job that they're applying, that they're advertising, then that could possibly, I'm not saying overall, because from my experience, and when I talk to Penguin about this and things like this, each role has an individual recruiter working and filtering those applications. So they won't necessarily see that you've had lots and lots of applications previously. So what I would say is to go ahead, keep applying, but perhaps be more selective about the roles you are applying for, so that, if you're applying for HR and you're applying for marketing and you're applying for sales and you're applying for editorial and production, all of those jobs need some very different skills. Whilst they might overall be entry level or assistant level and they all office jobs, some of them call for some very different personalities within those roles. So I would possibly be a bit more selective. But no, I don't think it goes against you at all, unless you're doing like masses, applying for every single job they advertise at every single level. But entry level, it shouldn't make that much difference, because they do recruit without necessarily seeing. And that's the other thing about which you've got to be thankful for with diversity and inclusion, is that a lot of the recruitment is very, very fair processes. And what I do know from every publisher I've spoken to, which is over 300 publishers, that about their recruitment practices, is that all applications are read to some extent. Okay, now just before we round off, you could help me, please. So what would you like me? I'm going to do 5 videos, very short videos for next week. What would you like me to talk about in those 5 videos? And what would you like me to talk about in the podcast that comes out on Monday? So you can do some of my thinking for me. So if you'd like to put that in the chat, I'd be grateful. And I'll see if we've got any more questions while you're doing that. As a comment from somebody, hello, the person in Bangladesh. This is tailored to the UK. I do work across all the world. I don't do recruitment. I can't help you with a visa. You'll find it very difficult to get work for a UK publisher without a visa. Even doing remote work, you'll find it very difficult to get UK work. One of the reasons with UK publishers is first of all, you need a visa to work in the UK, but if it's remote work, it doesn't work very often internationally because of tax, health and safety and other legal requirements. So that's the thing. Okay, lovely. So we've got tips for tailoring. Right. Yeah, I was going to do a CV episode. Cover letters, applying for jobs, stand out. Okay, we will try and do that. So I've been talking for an hour. I'm going to round it up here. So where to go next? Now, first of all, work in publishing, follow the hashtag across social media. Make sure okay, maybe information about independent publishers that may be easier to apply to. There is an organisation called the Independent Publishers Guild. I'm a member of it. It is independentpublishersguild.com, and they have a jobs board on their website. So if you're looking to work for an independent publisher, go and check out their jobs board. Now, other things that are coming up, the Society of Young Publishers. I don't think I've mentioned them once today, which is very remiss of me. I have a long association with the SYP, as it is known. They have their conference coming up on December the 2nd in Oxford. It is probably the best networking opportunity you will get this year. Highly, highly recommend their conference. It's usually at quite a very low competitive price. So check out the SYP. And if you can, register for their conference in Oxford. Weekly podcast out Monday. We have a careers clinic all year round, which is free if you are in the UK. Free 15-minute chat with me. We charge for time outside of that, but you see, the thing is the time that I get paid for allows me to spend my time for free talking to you. So that's where we go. And it just leaves me to say, other thing, please don't just follow me on LinkedIn, send me a connection request on LinkedIn, because if you're on LinkedIn, by being connected to me, that will help your algorithm. And I also give all my clients a LinkedIn target. And part of me giving them a LinkedIn target means I have a personal target of the number of connections I have to be at on the 31st of December. And at the moment, I'm about 200 short. So please send me a connection request, LinkedIn. It just leaves me to say, may you all be doing a job you love and being paid the salary that you so richly deserve. Thank you for your time. And just a reminder, this evening's broadcast is copyright information that's been extracted from How to Job Search in Book Publishing to be published in 2024. Thank you for your time. Good night.